A shalom and welcome to another edition here on the Genesis 49ers page, where we say no to vague interpretations and we give thorough breakdowns. Today's topic is going to be a hot topic. We're going to bring out the proofs and the truths about the Hebrewisms of West Africa, and the title, as you can clearly see, is inspired by the Joseph J. Williams work, early 1900s. What it came out sometime in the 1900s, proving the authenticity of the claims that the West African people were Hebrews. Now we're going to go to different epochs of time, different sources to prove that those claims are valid. So that's how I got the title of the video, Hebrewisms of West Africa, from that brother, that scholar that sat down and corroborated the information for our people today. All right. Now, also for brothers that don't have the understanding, because I know a lot of camps don't go into this information much, and a lot of people don't go into information at all. What you want to call yourself a school. A school has a corpus of knowledge. A school has a curriculum. A school has goals. And these camps, and no, I'm not camp bashing, I'm trying to reconstruct it. This is the advice you need to do. You need to have study guides. You need to have quizzes, corpuses. You need to have schedules. You need to have these things in order to be considered a school. If not, you're just a hangout club. Here at Genesis 49ers, we're trying to provide information to reconstruct and rebuild and reform the thinking of the mind so we can bring forth real schools and real knowledge. Now, here's Hebrewisms of West Africa. If you haven't got that book, get it. It's not in my presentation, but we're going to bring up things, the same topics and the same claims that he would bring. First slide is we're going to open up with a scripture. And it's going to be Zephaniah 3:10. It says, "From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliants, even the daughter of my dispersed, shall bring my offering." Now, Zephaniah is privy, which his grandfather was named Cushite, right, because of their dark skin. That's another point. Now, he was privy to the Israelites that went beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, which is where in Africa. They was going towards the west of Africa, okay? Because Ethiopia, the whole continent of Africa wasn't always called Africa. It was called Upper and Lower Ethiopia. Now, so that's Zephaniah 3:10. It proves that the Israelites did go deep into Africa. Let's keep going. Next slide. Now, this is from the Chronicles of Jerahmeel, all right? Page 183, it says, "After an interval of 5 years, he mustered together the Babylonians, the Kutums, the Avim, and the Beni Hamath, and the Sepharvaim, and then going against Judah, besieged all the fortified cities in Judah among the 150 places in which were the tribes of Judah and Simeon." Now, this is not even written in the King James Version Bible. Okay, this is why I tell you, brothers, you need to broaden your scope. Stop being so overly religious and saying, "Oh well, if it's not in the KJV, I'm not gonna adhere to it." Or like a certain camp I know that I'm no longer a part of. "Oh, if Bishop didn't say it, then I'm not gonna deal with it." You sound stupid. Okay, we're here to uplift our people and bring them to a higher level of scholarship, not keep them dumb and stupid and tell them what the slave master would tell them. You can't read. Well, anyway, here it is. It says, "He besieged them and took them captive and sought to bring them to Lala and Habor, to the other tribes," meaning the northern kingdom. "Hearing that Taharka, king of Ethiopia, whose land was near Egypt, had rebelled against him, he took with him the tribes of Judah and Simeon and ascended the mountains of Ethiopia to wage war with the Ethiopian king and to test the strength of the tribes of Judah and Simeon. He then took these tribes and concealed them behind the mountains of darkness on the other side of the rivers of Ethiopia. Concerning them, the prophetess Hitory, the daughter of Pusai, prophesied, 'They shall bring my offering.' This was the fourth captivity brought about by Sennacherib, king of Assyria." And we're not privy to the prophetess Hitory. I guess that work was destroyed in history or not discovered yet, because I haven't been able to find the prophetess Hitory. And that's another thing. You got to understand the 81 books that we have that were translated by King James, the King James regime and his peoples, right? His 70 translators. That's not all of it. We have other books and stuff like that. If you read Alexandria, okay, not Alexandria, not Philo Alexandria. Well, one of the early church fathers, he would quote a lot of scriptures that be like, where are these scriptures coming from? They're not in the 81 books that we have available to us, because at his time in the 1st and 2nd century, he had access to more scriptures than we do today. That's my point. But anyway, I brought this out to show that they went beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, beyond the mountains of Ethiopia, and was in Africa. And then this is around the 8th and 7th century BC. Okay, and I don't say BC before Common Era. No, BC before Christ, just like we've been saying. So next slide. All right, we're building up to it. Okay, here it is, the Liongo. Now we're going from the 7th, 8th century, and now we're going all the way to around the 1600s and 1700s, right? The Liongo, it is stated that the Falashas are not the only Jews of a Negro race. Bastian speaks of Negro Jews living on the Liongo coast in Western Africa. They are called there the Mavumbo or Judios. They are on the whole a fair-looking race, says Bastian. They are more serious and restrained than the rest of the Negroes. Although in other places they are despised, here they take a dominating position, or at least such as to be respected and partly even feared, because they are rich and have most of the commerce in their hands. The same author claims that though they are of a Negro race, let you know that these are what you would call Negroid people, dark skin and woolly hair. It says still he detected Semitic facial features in their physiognomies, even in Madagascar, and it's going to something else. And I don't have the book source here, but the source is The Jew by Maurice Fishberg. Let me put it on the Jews of West Africa. The Jew, or History of the Jew by Maurice Fishberg. So brothers can have it. The Jew by Maurice Fishberg, which is a renowned Jewish historian, and he was honest in his scholarship. I might have spelled that wrong, but Maurice Fishberg, he was honest in his scholarship and brought out the Negroid Jews. Okay, and that's where I got the information about the Jews of Jamaica and Suriname being dark Negro Jews as well, if you watch my video on it. Now, continuing on to the next slide. So we see in the 8th, 7th century Jews migrating into West Africa, or migrating deep into Africa, past Ethiopia, or past the Essenes, right? And we see the evidence of the Liongo coast in Western Africa, right? And the Jews there, right? We see that. So we can already come to a conclusion that these were Israelites, but we're going to keep going. Every, right? It's another quote from the source, The Jews of Africa by Sidney Mendelssohn, page 16 through 17. John Pory, the English translator of the History and Description of Africa by Leo Africanus, writing commencement, contributed a chapter on the religions of Africa. And I want to stop there, because a lot of people say we need to get back to African spirituality. Which one? Do you know how many spiritual systems are in Africa? Do you know how many systems are in Africa? Okay, and guess what? Hebrew's one of them. Islam's one of them. Which one are you going to pick? African spirituality, saying the word African is very ambiguous. Saying the word Hebrew is very specific and concrete. We can give you the laws and statutes and commandments. We can show you how to follow that way. Stop being simple and come back to your law, statutes, and commandments, and your identity as Hebrew Israelites that the Bible speaks of. All right? Stop following vague interpretations. But here we go. It says, the religion of Africa in which he remarks at this day also the Essenes affirm, meaning the ancient Ethiopians affirm. It says, upon Nilus, or the Nile, and toward the west, there inhabited a most populous nation of the Jewish stock under a mighty king, and some of our modern cosmographers set down a province in those quarters which they call the land of the Hebrews, placed between Abyssinia and the Congo. So we have the historical records to prove that the Israelites, the Jews, were in Africa. Okay? Hebrewisms of West Africa. And like I said, the source of the Jews of Africa by Sidney Mendelssohn, page 16 through 17. And look to the right, you can see a very interesting picture of a map of the Kingdom of Gorham. But if you see to the right of Kingdom of Gorham, and then to the right of Kingdom of the Shankala, it's the Abyssinian Kingdom. And between that, you can see on this map, because remember he said the cosmographers set down a province in those quarters which they call the land of Hebrews. You can see on this map it says Jews exiled. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it that good on the video, but it says Jews exiled. They wrote this on their maps because they understood, plain and simple, this is what the Jews were exiled. It's just that simple. There are exiled Jews living in that land. There's no deep, hard revelation on that within the Kingdom of Africa. And that's what this reference was talking about. John Porter was talking about those cosmographers, those map makers that will put that in Africa. All right. So every meaning Hebrew, right? Next slide. This is from Shakespeare and the Jews by James Shapiro, which I put this in here for a reason because you have a lot of naysayers saying, oh no, the Jews wasn't black. They wasn't this, they wasn't that. And, you know, a lot of these James White followers, oh, they never were black. And none of, we have the historical records to crush that to pieces. Understand that. Not all of us are fools out here. We study to prove. And we bring forth the evidence. We don't follow vague interpretations. We give thorough breakdowns. And guess what? The whole religion of Christianity is a vague interpretation. That's why Justin Martyr had to get into it with the followers of Saturn. Because Saturn was like, wait a minute. The followers of Saturn was like, wait a minute. You guys took from our God, our deity. The December 25th thing, the Christmas thing, all these different things that Christianity has created and molded and added to the Bible. They said, wait a minute, you took that from us. Because that's exactly what Christianity is. It's just a bunch of, as an amalgamated religion that's combined of Babylonian deities, Saturnalis, and all these different gods. It's not even concrete. It has little to do with the Bible. It only shares some of the names. It has little to do with the Bible. But anywho, some people that's following their regime will say, oh, they're not black. They were Negroid. Shakespeare and the Jews by James Shapiro. It says the accumulated experience of 100 years of travel. Now, this is the written experience of 100 years of travel now. Trade and conquest has convinced Europeans that some of the accepted stereotypes of Jewish racial otherness, including the belief that the Jews were black, need to be qualified. When William Brereton jotted down the impressions of the Jews in the synagogue in Amsterdam in 1635, so this ain't long ago. This ain't 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago. This is about 400 or 500 years ago. It says he noted that the Jewish men are most black. This is a source. A lot of you people on YouTube and on the social media networks, all you do is run your damn mouth. You don't prove anything. But here at Genesis 49, we give you the proof. We show you exactly where we're getting this stuff from. You guys are wise in your own conceit, as the scriptures say. We have the witnesses. We taking y'all to court. And we convicting a lot of y'all of perjury. A lot of y'all lying on the Bible. You lying on the ancient men. You lying on who the Israelites are. And we're here to bring forth the proof. It says, insatiably given unto women. And you know Jake. That's like their kryptonite. It says, drawing here on the contemporary prejudice linking blackness and licentiousness. And when the Scottish minister Robert Kirk toured London in January 1669, he also paid a visit to the synagogue there, where he observed over 200 Jews worshiping. He noted in his journal that they were all very black men. They were all very black men. And indistinct in their reasoning as gypsies. He didn't say they were a little black. He didn't say they was tan. He didn't say that they had a slight tint of brown on them. He said they were very black men. This was in 1690. By the end of the 17th century, works like the English translation of François Maximilien Mison's A New Voyage to Italy make clear that it is a vulgar error that the Jews are all black. Now, why he says it's a vulgar error? Because they've been taught and indoctrinated. Oh, these Jews that are in Austria and Germany, those are the real Jews. Those are the Jews. It's like today. But what they found out was, wait a minute, we're going to all these different places, and the Jews there are dark-skinned men. Italy, Amsterdam. For all you Africoids out there that keep pushing this African BS like black people don't exist anywhere else. And guess what? Newsflash, you American blacks. Black is not a race, and African is ambiguous. Okay? Stop using those terms. You are Hebrew Israelites. And guess what? African is not all black people. Oh, if you're African, or if you're black, you're African. Stop thinking like that. You got that from Blumenbach. Y'all better go back and refer to my video on Blumenbach and the colorism that he brought forth. All right? But nonetheless, this is the proof that the Jews were of the Negroid type. The mission observes is only true of the Portuguese Jews who, marrying always among one another, begat children like themselves. Consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion, swarthiness meaning dark skin, black, is entailed upon their whole race, even in northern regions. And what does that put a blunder on? That dumb scientific theory that it depends on how much sunlight you get to be black or if you're white. That's a lie. The Eskimos wouldn't exist. They've been living in that territory of northern Canada for eons, man, thousands of years. Why haven't they turned white yet? Why are they so dark-skinned? Portugal is in Europe. Why didn't they turn white? They lived there for thousands of years. Simple. Stop thinking that science means truth. It just means to know. You can know knowledge, you can know the truth, or you can know bullshit. Now, let's get back into it. I know I'm ranting on this, but hey, man, there's a lot of ignorant souls out there. Let's just put it like that. It says, but the Jews who are originally of Germany, those, for example, I have seen at Prague, are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen. Even Manasseh ben Israel, in his plea to readmission of the Jews into England, offered evidence that some of the Jews in this land differed racially. Because he was like, wait a minute, these Jews over here in Italy, these Jews in Portugal, these Jews in Germany, they're black. They're black. They're Negroid. Who are these people claiming to be Jews? Wait a minute. How the hell are they Jews? They don't look like these people. From Shakespeare and the Jews by James Shapiro. Very good book. I will recommend you to buy it just to get this perspective. Next slide. And I put that in there for all the naysayers. Well, they're not. There's no proof that they were Negroid. Do like an ostrich and put your head in the dirt, please. And don't come back out until you learn your lesson. All right, here we go. Ebos. There are certain customs which rather point to the Levitic influence at a more or less remote period. This is suggested in the underlying ideas concerning sacrifice and the practice of circumcision. The language also bears several interesting parallels with the Hebrew idiom. And this is from the Among the Ebos of Nigeria by G.T. Baston, page 31. So we have the archives, we have the books, we have the proof that these people were Israelites. The Ebos of Nigeria are indeed Israelites. They're not Commission. They're not of Kemet, okay, or any other one of your African fantasies. They themselves understand that they are Hebrew Israelites. And the historians understand that they were Hebrew Israelites. Next slide. Judah. The kingdom of Judah, or Wida, right, is marked with the capital Shapiro, Asavi, and its river Euphrates. They had the major river of the kingdom of Judah of this location was the Euphrates. Why? Maybe because the inhabitants were trying to remember their homeland. How about that in the Middle East? It says, because after having given the name Judakis, okay, like the caciques, right? That's that Spanish or Portuguese influence, to the inhabitants of Judah. And that's from the source Trade Relations Between the Bight of Benin and the Bahia by Pierre Verger, page 20. So here we have the proof. Look, the kingdom of Judah. It was named after them because the inhabitants were Judah. It's that simple. It's not hard. And don't give me that Wikipedia BS that that's a bird. They named it after a bird. Yeah, right. Always trying to cover up the true historical clarity and the facts. Now, this next slide, if you guys are not familiar with Aluda Equiano and you've been in the truth for a while, purchase his book. There's no reason why you shouldn't have this book. Every Israelite brother and sister should purchase his book and read his book. Why? We're about to get into it because it was his autobiography. This wasn't from the perspective of somebody else. This is from him himself. And what he perceived and what he seen and what he jotted down. Now here's the quote. It says, "Such is the imperfect sketch my memory has furnished me with of manners and customs of a people." Why does he say imperfect sketch? Because this is when he was a child and before he was kidnapped and sold into slavery. Right? It says, "The manners and the customs of a people on whom I first drew breath and I cannot forbear." Who are these people? The Igbos. Suggesting what has long struck me very forcibly, namely the strong analogy between which even by this sketch, imperfect as it is, appears to me to prevail in the manners and customs of my countrymen. Who is his countrymen? The Igbos. And those Jews before they had reached the promised land. So he said there's an analogy between the Igbos and the Jews. An analogy which alone would induce me to think that the one people had sprung forth from the other. So guess what? For Garfield, who said, Equiano never said he was a Jew or his people were Jews. Yes, he did. Right here in this passage on page 30. He said, which alone would induce me to think that one people had sprung forth from the other. What people? That the Igbos sprung forth from the Jews. This is what he said. This is in his writing. This is what he wrote down and how he felt about the issue. And the source is the life of Aluda Equiano, page 30. Okay? So, again, if you're an Israelite and you watch this video, you have not purchased this book, shame on you. You need to purchase this book and read it. He has a very interesting life. Being sold to slavery, being freed, going to London, studying, being amongst the Mosquito Indians. Because when you get the little green booklet, there's a Gadite in the front of it, and he was amongst the Mosquito Indians. He had a lot of good things to say about them and how pious they was and how they really believed in the Most High. Okay, he had an affinity for them. Now, next slide. Jewry, okay. Medieval scholars and judges, for example, a local scholar named Ishmael Haddad. I talked about this in my prior video called The Israelites of Timbuktu. It says Ishmael Haddad, who was interviewed by the journalist in 2005, could recount that one of his ancestors was Mahmud Kati. And we know Kati is how you say Kohath, the people of Kohath, which was the son of Levi. And that's a funny thing because the ancient name of Haiti is actually Hati or Kati. Duly note that, right? A scholar whose father had moved to Timbuktu after being expelled from Spain in the 1400s. He can trace himself back to a Jew that was expelled from Spain and went to Timbuktu, and whose mother was the sister of then the Sungai king Askia Muhammad. Mr. Haddad's ancestors had written notes in the margins of their manuscripts and thus passed down a record of the family's past along with the family library, births and deaths in imperial family, draft of imperial letters, and records of trade. And Haddad showed a New York Times reporter a letter case which held a history of the Spanish and Sangha branches of his family. He told the reporter, "This is our family history. It was written in 1519, and he still has it, of descended from these Kati people, which are Kohath, are Jews." Understand that. And they were Moroccan traders. They went through Africa and traded. And he got expelled from Spain during the expulsion, okay, of the Jews and came down into Africa and started to live. And they wrote their history in 1519. And that's from a family, a world history by Mary Jo Maynes. Mary Jo Maynes, and page 47 is where you can find that. I try to use a lot of Google books so you brothers can actually go read it yourselves. Next page. And here's the picture of Ishmael had a daughter. Now, a lot of people, if I tell you that's a Jew, no, that's not a Jew. Why not? Oh, he's black, he's African. That's the danger of that African thing. Trying to judge people based off phenotype and judge people off the false notion that Africa means nigger and nigger means African. I covered that in my video about Blumenbach. But guess what? He has the records to validate that he's an Israelite from the Kati people, the family of the Kati, meaning the people of Kohath, the Levites. Ishmael here, a daughter, living proof of Jewry. Okay? He still has the records. Next slide. Slaves, because we got to understand something. You have these West African people didn't all disappear in slavery and came over here. No, a lot of them still retain who they are there in that land. Okay, it says the various people of West African coast, Mandingos, Fulani, Krumah, Ashanti, Fanti, Yoruba, and Igbo, already separated by languages and customs, did not unite against the invading slavers, but remained isolated and vulnerable. It was easy for slavers to set one group against another. A historian of the trade has written, it was as though an invading force had arrived in Europe during the Dark Ages and had exploited the continent by pitting each feudal lord against his neighbors. And that's what happened. We fought amongst each other, and the scriptures go into that. And we will tear at the flesh of our brothers. And I think in the book Isaiah 9. Now, these are all Israelites. They were sold into slavery. They fit the prophecy, okay? And we bring forth the proof and the records, like the Mandingos and Malinkas, they got sold to Mexico. And guess what? The Malinkas language and the Aztec language have have a lot of similarities, okay? And a lot of people pin those people as the same people. They're both Israelites, okay? Yoruba and the Igbo, Yoruba being from the Benai of Ephraim, being the children of Ephraim, okay? Being called Imo Yaquam by the other Africans, by the native Africans, saying these are strange people. They're not our people. And the Igbos we brought out earlier about Alula Ekiano, that their customs and their manners match the Hebraic ones. These are Israelites. Those brothers that are in Atlanta, Igbo, Yoruba, they're Israelites. Okay? A lot of the North American, African American, they come from the Igbo stock. Okay, if you're a child, that's if you were a child of slavery. If not, you was a native Indian then. Okay, that was put. When I say slavery, I'm talking about via the slave trade, via slave ships. All right, so let's get the next slide. Just in case the viewer is not familiar with the prophecy, Deuteronomy 28:68 states, "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships." When that Egypt means bondage, okay? Again with ships, slavery, right? Slave trade. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, not going to see our homeland again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen, slave men, and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you, meaning no man shall redeem you, because you in the Leviticus, I think the 25th chapter, you could buy, if your brother was sold into slavery to a foreign nation, you can actually pay and go buy the price or whatever it was to free your brother. And the Lord said, no, nobody's going to save you from this. Nobody's going to get you out of this. And lo and behold, we're still in this captivity. Next slide. Okay, we're reaching the end. The idiomas are different idioms, right? The Yoruba, I covered this in one of my prior videos about Yoruba and Yoruba, right? Yoruba comes from the word Yoruba, which means he increases, i.e. Joseph. That's why they call themselves the Benai of Ephraim. And that's Strong's H7235. EWE is not Ewi, it's ever. That's how you pronounce it. What does ever mean? Hebrew. And that's Strong's H5680, that's a tribe of or language group of Africa, of West Africa. When you say the Ivory Coast, it should be Every coast, the Hebrew coast, the Hebraic coast of Africa. Ashanti, the people of Ashan. Okay? Strong's H6227. And you can find those people in Ghana. Because T means people of and Ashan. The Wida, we brought that out. Strong's H30 and 68. That's going into Judah. These are Hebraic cognates being found in West Africa. Hebrewisms of West Africa. Next and final slide. Tertullian, a second century historian, he wrote that the Jews were living in Carthage and they are found still further west. The Jews were even further west of Carthage. Rabbi Isaac, from Tyre to Carthage, know all of Israel and its heavenly Father. Okay, so we've been in and out of Africa as many other states and countries and provinces as well. Okay, but today's focus was on the Hebrewisms of Africa. All right. That's my presentations, brothers and sisters. I pray that this was insightful, that you learned a lot from it, and you took notes, and you were able to, gain an understanding about these different African, West African people, and how their history and their records corroborate an analogy between the ancient Israelites, and they are the Jews that the Bible speaks of. Therefore, proves that the children of the slave trade were Jews and Israelites. So with that, I'm going to conclude the lesson. Subscribe for more videos. More videos are coming. More insightful videos. We're going to give you the source material. We're not going to BS with you. No more vague interpretations. We follow thorough breakdowns. Genesis 49ers, signing off.